Hello and welcome to another episode of Wave Work Stress Goodbye podcast with me, your host, Luke Richardson. This week's episode is all about workplace meetings. Now, when I was a project manager, I had a hell of a lot of meetings to attend, whether they were off-site or away from my headquarters and on building sites, or since the coronavirus, they seem to be more common on the likes of Zoom and Microsoft Teams. Now, no matter what they were, the meetings, whether they were remote meetings or physical meetings, there was always one thing that was in common with me personally with all of them, and that was that I worried about them. So maybe you can relate to this. So a meeting will get booked, say, 2 or 3 weeks in advance, and I tend to create the habit of worrying about that meeting. And as I say, maybe you can relate to that as well. And I'd play out the dialogues in my mind before they occurred. So I'd plan out what I was going to say, and if this happened, I'd say this, and if that happened, I'd say that. I'd really get in my own mind and in my head of how the meeting was going to go. And since knowing about this deeper understanding of how life worked, I realise now that the preparation that I was doing in my mind, that I thought was the best way to approach the meeting, that I thought was keeping me safe, was probably the worst thing I could have really done, because it was a mirage and a complete waste of time. Now, everything that went off within my own mind that I thought would happen in the meeting never happened anyway. So the point I'm trying to make here is that I'm not saying that you shouldn't prepare for a meeting. If you need to look at some plans, or you need to know about if you need to find out certain things about the meeting before you go in it, absolutely do that. That's good prep. Bad prep is getting in your own head and having the meeting 100 times before you've even got in the meeting. You see what I mean? There's a difference, and with a deeper knowing of how life truly works, you only have to do the meeting once, and that's when you're in the meeting itself, within those moments. So, say the meeting was an hour long, you only have to be in that meeting for that hour, physically and mentally. Whereas the mistake I was doing was being in the meeting mentally several times before the meeting actually took place. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So, we as human beings tend to live in our head a hell of a lot, because we create our reality through thinking, and I was constantly taking myself away from the present moment to be in that meeting, but I was in that meeting in my imagination, and I thought that was a good thing. I thought, look at me, I'm being very prepared here, going over and over this in my own mind. So when I actually get in the meeting for real, this will be good. And it was a complete waste of time. And maybe you can relate to that as well. And also, not only did I think about the meeting a lot before the meeting actually occurred, but when the meeting had actually happened, I'd be thinking about it again afterwards. So, for instance, thoughts like, did that meeting go well? What did they think of me? What did my colleague think of me? And again, it was a complete waste of time, because it was only my imagination and my own reality and my own thoughts that was keeping me wedded to that thinking, to that reality, whereas nobody else in that meeting was thinking those things about me personally. They weren't thinking, Luke didn't do very well in that meeting, or even if they thought Luke was doing excellent in that meeting. Even if they were thinking those things, they weren't thinking about it any more than a millisecond, because they're too preoccupied within their own mind about themselves. Now, the funny thing about work meetings is we are so conscious about other people within meetings, whereas the irony is they're more preoccupied about themselves, and they only really think about us or you when the time arises. So if, say, you're speaking in the meeting, they're only thinking about you in that moment, and once that moment's passed, they're thinking about something else that's more relevant to them. Even if it's, when's this meeting going to end because I want to get my lunch. That's a pure example of people being within their own realities. If you've been in a work meeting before, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because say you've got, I don't know, half a dozen people in the meeting. You've got one person who's seeing it one way. I'm talking about the topic of the meeting. You've got one person seeing the topic of the meeting one way. You've got another person thinking of it in another way. You've got yet another person thinking about it in a different way, and then you've got a fourth person thinking about it a different way, and so on and so on and so on. You get the picture, and that just proves the point I'm making, that we live in our own separate realities of life. People are seeing the meeting in a totally different way, and that's really, if you're an anxious person like I was and am. I'm not as anxious now. Now I know this understanding a lot more because it helps me, and I hope it helps you. But that's really good news if you are someone who's anxious about life and anxious about work meetings, because if you understand that that's all that's going on, you're living in your reality and other people are living in their realities as well, then it takes a lot of, say you've got a backpack full of bricks. It allows you to take the backpack off and live life a hell of a lot lighter, and you can go into the meeting at work with less pressure, full of ideas, and thrive. I'll say, I'm not saying you shouldn't prepare for meetings, but the only way you're going to excel at the meeting is in the meeting itself, not in your head 2 weeks prior to it, not in your head a week prior to it, not in your head 1 or 2 days prior to it, not in your head half an hour before it, but in the moment of the meeting itself. And when you know this understanding a lot more deeply, but when the meeting is over, you don't have to be thinking about it all the time. You can leave it for what it was, and know that the next actions from the meeting don't need to be tackled until that moment arises. I hope if you're in a job where you have a lot of meetings and you get very anxious about them, I hope this really helps and resonates with you. And as I said on the last recording, I've got an Instagram account now. I'll put the link in the description below on this recording. I'll also put my website, my YouTube channel in there as well. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about these recordings. Is there anything you want to hear in particular? Do let me know. Email me. I've got my email address in the comments as well. And if you think I can help you at all in any particular way with your professional working career in terms of that psychologically, do let me know, and I'll be glad to give you a few pointers and some wisdom as I try to aim to do on every single recording that I create for you guys. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll see you on the next recording. Bye bye.